written statement which can be distributed, and I'll summarize it. How does that sound, Madam Chairman? My name is Kenneth Payne. I'm a resident of Richmond, Rhode Island. I wear several hats, so I won't go through all the responsibilities I have currently or have had in the past. But I've been involved in energy issues since 1969 in our state. One of the things about energy is that in all energy uses, you take energy, convert it to another use, and there's a waste byproduct. That's just part of what happens in energy usage. Now, when we eat, we digest our food, and then we have waste, right? And we have a way of treating those waste, a wastewater treatment plant. So it's absolutely a standard expectation that you try to control the quality of the waste and limit its impact and charge fees for its treatment. That's very standard. However, in this instance, with regard to the fossil fuel, we treat the atmosphere as the immense garbage can in the sky. And there's no cost associated with using it, nor real standards in the same way for what happens. This bill solves that problem. It's not radical in its conception. It's because of the magnitude of the issue. It's complex in its implementation, and that's part of reality. But don't think of the bill as fundamentally radical. It's fundamentally very simple. Another thing I want to point out, and this is based on my experience, is, as many of you know, I was administrator of the Office of Energy Resources. I took over that position in late 2009 with an obligation to get $60 million of ARRA funds out on the street in essentially 6 months' time. And I had to write regulations, I had to go through all those procedures in order to do that. And I had to say, okay, this is all hands on deck. We're going to get the job done. And we did. So that while what's in this bill is ambitious and aggressive, from my experience, it's not undoable. It can be done. One of the great points about this bill, and it's not something that you would immediately recognize, is it says that the Department of Administration, and ergo its director, has a major role. And if anyone experienced with Rhode Island government knows that the Director of Administration is the go-to person for getting things done that have some complexity in them. So this bill includes the Director of Administration up front. That's a very powerful aspect of it. The other thing is that the bill makes an enormous amount of use of the Administrative Procedures Act. I've been a hearing officer, I've had to conduct hearings, I've had to review things after hearings. And there's a standard of proof in the Administrative Procedures Act that says you can't be arbitrary and capricious, and you have to base your decision based on the evidence placed in the record. So this actually has internal control to prevent crucial things from going on. People just have to submit information into the record, and then decisions have to be made, and then you can appeal them if you don't like them. So that this is not just turning 3 agencies loose on the topic without any guidance. By including the Administrative Procedure Act, it really has a lot, and this bill makes very heavy use of that. So it has internal safeguards, it has the Director of Administration involved, and it is not radical. Is that a lot to be done? Yes, but in my experience, when the need presents itself, this assembly has shown an ability to enact major legislation. We've seen that happen repeatedly. In my term here as the Chief Policy Advisor to the Senate, I can name instances when bills no more complex with this were handled in a single session. So it is doable from that perspective as well. So there you have it in a nutshell. This is something that's not radical, is doable and controlled, and has internal safeguards.
Thank you, Ken. I had a couple of questions.
Yes.
Because of your background and experience and so forth. How would this affect agriculture, the tractors? I know we're talking in the future, but it doesn't really speak to that. How would you see that it would affect the agricultural community as far as their equipment and so forth?
I think that the equipment in the U.S. is evolving very rapidly, and so that I expect agricultural equipment will also evolve. One of Rhode Island's challenges is that most of our agriculture is fairly small scale, so that for many farmers there isn't U.S. design equipment that meets it, and you have to go to European and Japan to get the kinds of piece of equipment that you need. And I think that we'll see that over time that those things happen. And that in terms of total emissions, agricultural equipment is de minimis in terms of its total, so that I think there'll be time to take care of that.
Which I agree. And I just, as you were talking, I was just thinking of the work we had done over the years on bills of like this, and we would always address agriculture and bring it forward that their emissions is very, very small.
In terms of addressing greenhouse gas emissions, if you look at Paul Hawker's work, Drawdown, what you'll see is that local ag in Rhode Island will actually be a beneficiary of trying to reduce greenhouse gas emissions attributable to Rhode Island's lifestyles, so that I think can be a form of resurgence rather than a liability overall.
Are you familiar at all with the Massachusetts law if they address agriculture at all?
I'm not.
Yeah,
I can check it out for you, but I don't.
Maybe you can think about that a little bit, because I think that's something that we should address, because we want to encourage the continued green space use and so forth and so on. We don't want to deter agricultural production. There are some people that will continue to have antiques.
That's right.
Right? Just saying, I always like it is Ag Day. I kind of have to digress a little bit.
I was there, yes.
And then the other question I had about, and I could have asked Jerry this, but I know you were extensively.
I proofread Jerry's stuff on occasion.
Yes, it was about the enforcement part of it on page 11. How do you feel about that? I know you may have addressed it in your
No, I didn't.
but just like to get your take on that. That is
It's no different than civil enforcement of other things, and so that I don't. This is one of those things, if you were going to refine the bill, which I think would be useful, because there are things that you might say, this is one where we want to look at it as placeholder language, placeholder set of principles. I think it's workable to then look there and say, okay, how do we want to see this out?
Thank you. Yes, Senator Paul.
Thank you. Are you familiar with the ZEV mandate, the zero emission vehicle mandate that Rhode Island is part of? There's 9 states that require, I believe it's 15.4% of all car sales have to be electric vehicles. Can you speak to that? I know we heard some testimony about how difficult it's going to be to get people to buy electric cars, but can you talk about that in context of what Rhode Island has already done by joining?
I think the uptake on that could be more like cell phones than anything else. And I think that one of the things that we haven't thought through is a lot of the very specific issues around transitioning to electric vehicles. A whole system of financing highways and highway improvements, for example, is based on a petroleum economy. Let's be very real. So that what we have to accept is that we're in a time when we're going to have to evolve our thinking very rapidly. Because if I worry about what it's going to be like to make those kinds of transitions. And I think it's possible to do it. And you can't just simply react to it, but you have to say, we're going to evolve. And this is part of it. And we're going to be figuring out new systems to do lots of things. I'm confident that we have the ability to do that.
Thank you. Any further questions for Ken at this time?
Feel free to call me if you need me.
Thank you for being here. Thank you for the written testimony.
You bet. Thank you. I enjoyed it.